Alright, so I finally got around to reading the Gluttony if. Well, actually I read it a few weeks ago, but I'm just now deciding to make the video on it. For the people that have been here for a long time, you all know that I am a well-known procrastinator. But no worries, I read it and I'm now ready to do the review. With that being said, let's begin. Repatching together life in another world. This particular if takes place during Arc 6, somewhere in the middle to be exact. Subaru entered the Tegata library in search of the Book of the Dead. The specific book that Subaru was searching for was the Book of Reed Australia. Attempting to read the book, he found himself lost in what he assumed would be the memories of the first Sword Saint Reed Australia, but was nothing more than a white void. This white void was within an odd laguna called the Hall of Memories. It was here Subaru met the final gluttony, Louis Arnett, who is trapped there. Louis used Gluttony's authority of solar eclipse to take control of Subaru and become him. This is where the story takes place after Subaru, who is Louise but she believes she is Subaru, killed everyone and played this watchtower, murdering Amelia, Beatrice, Ram, Julius, and Mei Lee, only being left alive with Shala. The two set out on an adventure to find anyone who knew or was attached to the original Subaru. New Subaru wanted to know who old Subaru was and was going to do so by reading the Book of the Dead of everyone that knew the original Subaru. The Gluttony if starts off with saying patching together, patching together, patching together. This was repeated multiple times over and over. Once the saying reached its end, it would then say patching together, patching together, patching together, and even now, as he patched himself together, he was still incomplete. Just now entering reading this if chapter, I had no idea what this means, and this theme of constantly repeating the patching over and over again occurs multiple times throughout the chapter. Each time I saw it, I understood more and more. It was supposed to symbolize the patching together of the old Subaru's memories, so I really enjoyed this theme that was constantly ongoing. As for the actual start of the story, I was a bit confused. We were thrown in the middle of a flash forward that takes place sometime during the middle of the actual chapter. Here we are in a random village, no one else around. It was just Subaru, who was not named at the time, and a little girl named Amu Sears. The dialogue of the two was that of a question. Subaru had asked Amu a question, "Do you know my name?" Amu did not answer the question. She stood in silence, paralyzed from fear and anxiety. He began asking the question over and over. The narration behind the silence and the thought process of Amu was odd, but I loved it. Because the way the narration made the thinking process of Amu, it made it seem like it was the last question on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with no lifelines left. It made it extremely intense, which is good because the situation is quite intense, and it did really feel like a life or death question. Also, the aggression that Subaru held towards the girl was so funny to me because obviously this is the start and I did not necessarily understand what was going on. So when Subaru continuously asked over and over again for his name, I was so confused and taken back or astonished on why did he want her to say his name so badly. It actually made me laugh because he was just like, "Tell me my name, tell me my name." So it was just so funny how he wanted to know his own name so bad. But at the end of the day, Amu could not tell him his name, which in actuality turned out to be a great thing in the long run for her. By the end of their conversation, it was revealed that she was the only one in this village left alive. Next part is a picnic / traveling journey with Subaru, Amelia, Beatrice, Julius, Mei Lee, Ram, and Shala, which takes place in the past of the previous scene. But at this point, I thought he was having a normal talk with a group of people. I did feel that someone was missing, but you all should know that my memory is very spotty. So I was reading and I could not remember who was the missing member, in which it turned out to be Echidna, the scarf, not the witch, but I didn't notice that at the time. So I thought everything was normal. Just had a certain feeling that something was missing. The conversation they had was rather dull, I would say. It was just a normal character interaction and banter, so I wasn't really all that interested, especially since the topic of the conversation was about disgusting mayonnaise and how everyone apparently wants to eat it. It was horrible. Like I said, the interaction isn't much to talk about, but when Shala came in, she jumped in and whoosh, the group faded away. And at that point, I was like, hold on, wait, I'm kind of confused. And so as I kept reading, I'm putting things together, and then I realized, oh wait, they were fake this entire time? Because as I explained earlier in the video, that was more me setting up the scene and telling you all that Subaru killed every other member within the group that went to the watchtower. But when I began reading this story, they didn't tell me any of this, so I originally thought that everyone was alive. So when Shala came in and interrupted that, it really threw me off. But this part is so good because it really shows how off the deep end Subaru actually is or was, and how insane he's going. Because at this point, he's just gone crazy. He started hallucinating the dead members of the Arc 6 group, and this was a nice alternative to what we have seen from Arc 6, and it's great to see another way that Louise would handle being at Subaru. After they have a talk, Subaru and Shala continue down the road they were headed when not the goat, but the goat's brother appeared, Regin Suen. As you all know, as the residential auto stan that I am, I got hyped because for the first time in the If chapter, I thought we were finally going to get Ado. When you look at every other If chapter, Ayamatsu, Oboreru, Katsuneru, leaving out the Lust and Sloth If because I haven't read those yet, Ado has yet to be featured in the chapters. Every time he is brought up, he is either silhouetted, example being Katsunaru because Subaru was remembering a person, but he couldn't remember the name and that person was Ado. Or if you look at Ayamatsu where Subaru actually met with Ado, but the story never said his name, and they made a little joke about how if they were to meet under different circumstances, they could be really good friends. So as you can see, Teppei constantly keeps teasing me with Ado being debuted. And when it comes to this particular If, I was disappointed that I didn't see Ado, but I at least got his brother. Anyway, Subaru asked Regin if he knows Subaru, and it was confirmed that Regin knew old Subaru. Then boom, Shala snipes Regin's head off. At this point, I was like, whoa, what the? This is the first scene death of the chapter, and I was not expecting him to kill Regin here, and so it took me by complete surprise, because up to this point, as I said, he hasn't killed anyone yet, or at least not on screen. And so I wasn't expecting a death to happen, because at this point I still was very confused on how the chapter was going. But when it comes to the way he was killed, it was so brutal because his head was chopped in half, and it really hurt me since I know that's Ado's brother. Don't really care for the brother itself, but it's mostly because he's related to Ado. After the death of Regin, Subaru went back to the tower to read his Book of the Dead and got more information on old Subaru. After this, we switched to Echidna the Scarf. She was the only one out of the Arc 6 group who was able to escape to the outside world from Subaru and Shala's wrath. Echidna made her way back to the city of Pristilla. She warned many people about the wrath of Subaru, some believing, some didn't. She then talked to Ricardo, and out of nowhere, the floodgates opened and water filled the streets of Pristilla. The person who released the water gates was none other than Subaru. This part I really like because it shows the methodical nature of the new Subaru, the Louise Subaru, because Echidna escaped and he did not let that happen by coincidence or ignorance, but Subaru let her escape on purpose. This was such a good plan because he said that he did it so that Echidna would perfectly lead him right to where a large group of people who knew who old Subaru was, and specifically one person, but I'll get to that later. Both Ricardo and Echidna die, and then next we move on to the two great people who survived the flood. Well, one great person and one okay person. The great person is of course the GOAT Ado Suen. He finally showed up, and that's what I have been waiting for forever. It finally happened. Ado is finally in the If stories. Also Garfield's there, he's cool or whatever, but Ado is the GOAT. Ado and Subaru meet at last after all this events of destruction. They have what I would say a heartfelt moment, because for me, even though this is only one short chapter, I felt that this conversation was very long overdue, simply because of the amount of If chapters it took for these two to come together in contact with each other and for the story to actually realize Ado's a character. But one of the comments that stuck out to me was Subaru telling Ado that he only came to the city to kill Ado and everyone else was just a bonus. To me, this kind of shows the destructive nature and how far gone and crazy this new Subaru is, if he's willing to kill so many casualties that he knew had nothing to do with his goal, only just to reach Ado. Shala then killed Garfield, then shortly after killed Ado as well. Before Ado died, however, he told Subaru to be very wary of a man from the Australia lineage, who he should have attempted to kill first out of anyone. But Subaru didn't care for Reinhardt, and he said he will figure out how to kill him at a later date. Shala then attempted to snipe Felt in order to draw Reinhardt's attention away from Subaru, so he became occupied with saving Felt. Subaru and Shala then left back to the watchtower so that he can read everyone's Book of the Dead and patch himself together to gain more memories on the old Subaru. Switching perspectives to Reinhardt, Reinhardt came across Amu and the village that Subaru slaughtered. Amu had been completely traumatized and Reinhardt grew with anger. The best part about this is seeing how angry Reinhardt got, because we usually don't see Reinhardt get angry. He gets upset sometimes, but he is never really angry, especially the way that he felt during this chapter, because this time he was pissed. So I like seeing more emotions out of Reinhardt, and you all know how much I love Reinhardt. We switch back to Subaru. Subaru was talking with Shala. He mentioned that eventually he will have to kill Reinhardt, or it would be impossible to cobble himself back together. And finally, after Reinhardt would be killed, Shala would have to be the last one to die. Shala was extremely happy to hear her master say she would be the last one to die. Shala's devotion, I would say, is quite ridiculous, but you can say it's understandable. But you gotta admit, it's sort of wild how devoted she is to Subaru. Here the story ends with Subaru talking about the plan to find and put back together the old Subaru to help better understand the original version of himself. We have come to the end of the Gluttony If. I would say this is probably my favorite If chapter. I did not expect to like this as much as I did. We finally got to see Otto, so of course this probably is my favorite, because no other If chapter actually featured the true main character of ReZero. But I hope you all have enjoyed the video. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more content. Follow me on Twitter and join the Discord. Both links are in the description below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.